It's like a guy has been beaten up, smashed to the ground. You know, he had the premiership taken and he's lying there covered in blood and we're kicking him.
How you victimise Boris Johnson?
I don't care.
Really?
I'm not...
Of course, Boris Johnson intentionally misled the House of Commons. The issue here is not whether or not he intentionally lied, it's whether or not he believes that the lie that he told is important or big enough for him to lose his job. And I don't think that he thinks that it is. How many times has Boris lied to us? Not in the House of Commons. How many times has he lied to potentially many of his partners? He's lied or sort of lied about how many children he had. We can't be quite sure. I can't think of many times in this man's life where he has been honest. And this is just another example.
Well, you know, you and I are not going to disagree too much on Boris's distant relationship with the truth. I mean, you can't get away from the fact that the guy is a liar. His father, Stanley, at one point, while Boris was still Prime Minister, said, "I find it disgraceful that people can dismiss the Prime Minister of this country as a liar." Yeah, I remember when he had an extramarital affair with Petronella Wyatt, cheating on his wife. The News of the World put it all over the front page, and he stood on the steps of his house in Highbury, North London, the next day with a huge bank of photographers, TV cameras, reporters there, and he said, "This story is a total lie. It is," and this was a famous quote, "an inverted pyramid of piffle." It was 100% true. He also got sacked from the Times, his first job on Fleet Street, for lying in stories, making up quotes. So he does have a difficult relationship with the truth, there's no doubt about this. Now, I think that in terms of the Partygate problems that he has now, his real trouble is this. He says that you know, he never intentionally broke the rules, or he didn't. In fact, he felt that he didn't break the rules, but he has accepted a penalty from the Metropolitan Police. So he has accepted that he has broken the rules. Then, of course, it boils down to intention. I think there's even some suggestion that he may have sort of malevolently misled the House. I think that, like most of us, you know, he didn't really understand the rules.
He wrote them, Kevin.
Well, I don't think he wrote them. He didn't write them.
Well, he was Prime Minister.
Look. The thing about this is those were rules that he broke, and he did break them. He broke. I tell you what, Nicola. I tell you what I never understood is why he accepted he broke the rules once, and yet he was photographed and seen a number of Downing Street gatherings with drink and cakes and things like that.
He was ambushed by cake.
But why only once? Because he did the same things many times.
So he argues, like, was it David Cameron called him a greased pig? He argues as he's slivering up this poll to his next premiership. The greasy poll of Boris Johnson. He argues that at each of those different events, the rules were slightly different. This is his defence. So at one event, you were not supposed to have a gathering, and this is Partygate. So what constitutes a party? He's running rings around these kind of semantic issues. Also, at certain events, you had to be 2 meters apart. Now, I'm looking at those photographs saying they were definitely 1 meter or less apart. And in fact, he was reported as saying this is the least socially distanced event in London. Yeah. Now, how can he possibly squirm his way out of this one?
I can't argue with you about this. I mean, the point is, he's a politician, you know, so most politicians, they have an interesting relationship with the truth. They alter and manipulate the truth to their own narratives. That's what politicians do. And what slightly worries me about this is that if we go down this sort of navel-gazing into the past route, more and more politicians are going to end up in this mess. Now, will he get found guilty of this by the Privileges Committee? Will he get suspended from his seat in Uxbridge? Do you know what? I don't really care, because he's finished. He's finished. So what we're doing here, it's like a guy has been beaten up, smashed to the ground. You know, he had the premiership taken and he's lying there covered in blood and we're kicking him.
How you victimise Boris Johnson.
I don't care.
Really?
Look, he deserves to be kicked. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I think it's pointless. We're wasting our time. We're wasting taxpayers' money. Parliament is just fiddling with its own navel, just going down some kind of pointless route that will prove that, you know, we had a bit of a dodgy Prime Minister, and then what?
I agree with you that we shouldn't be wasting taxpayers' money, and there's a very simple way that we wouldn't have to waste taxpayers' money on this, is if Boris Johnson just held up his hands and told the truth from the off. I think that the general public will be split on this. You'll have the Boris supporters who will support Boris no matter what happens. And then you'll have the rest of us who either lost loved ones, couldn't get married, couldn't say goodbye to people during COVID. And yeah, this might just be about a couple of parties. Yes, this might be kicking a man down who's no longer Prime Minister, etc. But this means...
Kicking a man who doesn't matter anymore.
Kicking a man who doesn't matter anymore, but he does matter still to all those families, all those people who were so traumatised during that period and didn't feel like they got any justice, any accountability. This, for them, I feel like is the final nail in the coffin.
Yes, I do think, as I say, he's definitely finished. All this nonsense. Some of the papers today are saying, you know, Boris, if he gets away, if the Privilege Committee find him innocent, he will mount an astonishing political comeback. No, he won't. No, he won't. He's over. The Boris Johnson show is over. And in fact, I think there's a large part of him that is really enjoying this because he's back in the limelight where he loves to be.
Yeah.
You know, as to whether he succeeds in this mission to get off this, you know, I think it's kind of irrelevant. However, what I think this whole saga does reveal or remind us that those rules that they, stupid little rules that this government imposed on us through the ill-advised lockdowns that we now know they were making up the rules of as they went along, thanks to the lockdown files, were ridiculous, stupid, and should never have been imposed on anyone. And since he's in such big trouble about them, it serves him damn well right.
Well, I'd argue a little bit with you on that one, or quite a lot actually, because I don't think that the lockdown rules, all in all, were stupid. I absolutely get your point.
You read the lockdown files?
I didn't know, well, yeah, bits of them. Yeah. I'm totally with you that, you know, women going for a walk with a cup of tea in the northeast should not have been fined 250 quid. But generally speaking, the lockdown, they were going off what they felt they needed to do.
I'm not here to defend Boris Johnson, although I think, you know, I can understand why he's popular. And, you know, I'm not a Tory, I'm not a Conservative supporter, but I don't like Labour very much. So in that respect, you know, I kind of wish Boris Johnson was still in charge of the Tories because he does have this mysterious electoral popularity, and he might have won the next election. So in that respect, I'm kind of sorry he's gone. But this man was a shambles. He is a shambles, and the country became a shambles in his image. And that's, look at this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how did we ever get to a point where the whole nation was having a row about wallpaper and
precisely.
Internal decorating?
And
it's just absurd what that guy did to this.
Voters' trust in politicians is at an all-time low. I'm not just saying that anecdotally, that is factually correct. And it's such a shame that people, the general public, will now say, well, they're all the same. They're all the same. They all broke the rules. They all did this. They all lie to us. Look, there's an element.
They weren't all the Prime Minister, were they?
They weren't all the Prime Minister at the end of the day, exactly. And you know, you said earlier about you think that that's him done. I really, really hope that it is. And trust me, I hate that we're talking about him. I wish he would just disappear.
He won't hate it.
He won't hate it. He will love it. But it's like it's taking a leaf out of the Trump playbook, isn't it? Before that inquiry even starts, he's already said, it's biased, it's unlawful, this isn't right, I'm being mistreated, he's victimising himself. So it doesn't even matter whether they find him guilty or not. Funnily enough, he wouldn't be saying that if they found him innocent.
I don't see how him and his eminent lawyers can argue that this Privileges Committee procedure is unlawful. I mean, the Parliament voted for it to happen. I think that Boris Johnson might have some ground when he claims that it's biased. Harriet Harman, the chairman of the committee, has tweeted about how he definitely did intentionally break the rules, so we know where she stands. That's wrong. Don't forget, Chris Bryant, to his eternal credit, recused himself from this because he said, I've said too many bad things about Boris. We also know there's 7 people on this committee, 4 of them are Tories, but those 4 Tories are very critical of Boris, so he might have a chance. The Sue Gray report seems to me to be extremely dodgy now, because we now know that Sue Gray's a Labour fanatic.
No, it's not dodgy at all.
Well, she's a Labour fanatic.
No, she's not a Labour fanatic.
Well, she's a Labour. She's going to work for them. She's a Labour supporter.
Doesn't mean that you are a fanatic. She, after her
Labour supporter? Labour supporter? Give me that. Give me that.
She takes money from the Labour Party. She's not giving
she's
money.
She's a Labour supporter. Come on.
You're only a supporter if you give them the money, not take it.
Give me that.
No.
You know. Well, what do you think? She's a Tory?
She's a Labour employee.
She's
but before that, she had...
You don't work for the Labour Party unless you support them, do you?
Well, then...
I don't see Nigel Farage taking up a job for the Labour Party.
In which case, why have you got a problem with 4 Tory backbenchers deciding Boris Johnson's fate if they're critical of him?
I personally don't have a problem with this.
It's not biased then.
This sounds like naive, but I think we should, try to trust this committee to be honourable. I mean, I have my doubts, but what I'm talking about is this is what Boris is going to say. This is what his lawyers have already said, that this committee is inherently biased against him.
It is an independent inquiry, though, because they're not using the Sue Gray report at all. They're doing things...
Because it was rubbish.
How was it rubbish?
Well, because it didn't prove anything, did it? The evidence that she chose to highlight was incredibly selective.
In what way?
Half the parties weren't even mentioned. Lots and lots of incidents were not covered. Photographs that we knew existed of these gatherings were not included.
Because she was stopped
at the time. She's a Tory.
Brilliant. So, if Boris is found guilty, which I believe he should be, because the evidence is pretty clear. By the way,
I think he will be by the committee.
Well, I think he could even wheedle out of it, because it's very, very difficult to prove intent. You can prove the facts of a case, but it's very, very difficult to prove intent. So it will be interesting to see what they come up with. However, if he's found guilty... And
by the way, by the time this goes out, people will know who's right and who's wrong. But what I'm hearing from Westminster is most people, or a lot of Westminster insiders, believe that the committee will find him guilty. But because of all the mitigating circumstances that he's put into the investigation, saying it's biased, etc., that he might not get the requisite 10-day suspension that would trigger a by-election.
Well, I think he deserves to go as an MP. Do you know how many times he's voted since he stepped down from being Prime Minister? One time, 22nd of November last year. Prior to that, the last time he voted was a vote of confidence in himself. He is not a worthy MP. The people of Uxbridge and South Ruislip deserve better. He's off swanning it around, making tons of money, doing his speeches. Let him stay there. Give them a good representative in the House of Commons.
My hunch is they won't. They'll give him a suspension, but it'll be 5 days.
So he'll get out? Boris Johnson getting out on a technicality, Kevin? I've never heard of it before in my life.
I can understand why he's popular. And when he was in the big hole during Partygate, my instinct was I wanted him to survive, because although I'm not a fan of the Tories, not a fan of the Conservatives.
Because it makes better TV?
Well, no, because he, maybe alone could keep Keir Starmer out of office, who I am not a big fan of at all.
Why not? Because he had a curry and a beer once?
No, there's a lot more than that, Nicola. I think actually it's his haircut I don't like.
Okay, fair enough.